Synthetic biology is a broad field that draws from principles of engineering and computer science to create new biological systems and parts with novel functions. Synthetic biology and bioeconomy envision a future where manufacturing and economic growth are decoupled from greenhouse gas emissions. My name is Perez Moine, and I'm going to be a host here. Actually, I'm the chief convener of the Biotech online series. I want to thank you so much for coming today, and good morning to everyone. Today's session is about the synthetic biology and its role in the bioeconomy. And today's speaker will be Ian Busuulwa. When I was looking at synthetic biology while we discussed with the management what we could probably feature this year, going on with the discussions, we didn't see any other person better suited than Ian Busuulwa, according to his profile and our past engagements with him. Ian Busuulwa Peter is a graduate of biotechnology here at Makerere University, who has amassed a wealth of experience in science communication, science policy advocacy, grassroots mobilizations, and digital content management. He recently gained keen interest in synthetic biology-related policy owing to his public policy fellowship with GeneCo Bioworks, and is currently working with Synthetic Biology Africa or Sign Bio Africa, leading their policy advocacy and communication efforts. He is also working with Science Stories Africa, a project of Alliance for Science that seeks to improve public appreciation of science through storytelling. He's working as a project administrator and digital communications officer. He's also implementing another project supported by Alliance for Science known as Science Unplugged. I hope most of us probably have seen it run on several platforms, but mainly on TikTok. Ian has also spoken at a number of international conferences on topics of synthetic biology, biopolicy, biotechnology communication, and the bioeconomy. So he also works as the advocacy and dissemination lead of Uganda Biosciences Information Center, commonly known as UBIC, as an information hub. This is UBIC under NARO. So Ian is an active champion of the bioeconomy through his work as a coordinator for the Bioeconomy Coalition of Uganda. It is a new organization that has been formed under the patronage of SciFord, and is currently pursuing his master's at Kalinga Institute of Industrial Biotechnology in India. So I want to, at this point, invite Mr. Ian to take us through today's topic. He's going to highlight a small presentation about today's topic. We are looking at synthetic biology and its role in the bioeconomy. And we want to, first of all, delve into a small insight into the synthetic biology so that we understand how and what kind of application it is. And then we open up a discussion to see how synthetic biology enhances and fosters a better knowledge-based economy. Mr. Ian, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Perez, for the introduction. I hope I'm audible and clear to everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ian Peter Busuulwa from Synthetic Africa. Let me share my screen. All right, so today's discussion is going to be about synthetic biology and in the light of the new bioeconomy. So to tackle this very well, I'm going to start with looking at what synthetic biology is. And thereafter, I will talk about what synthetic biology is doing to address the bioeconomy. Right. So this right here is a summary of what this term synthetic biology covers. Basically, it is these three fields getting integrated into a single technology and giving us a very, very novel technology known as synthetic biology. So we're having traditional biotech or biosciences, combining this with principles of information technology and data science and bioinformatics, and also basic engineering to deliver a very high throughput technology that is enabling scientists to design biological systems that weren't previously existing in nature, and also redesigning those already existing to make them more efficient and generate a wide range of products. So this here is how synthetic biology basically works in these companies and laboratories. That one, they design a molecule, or in this case, let's say a DNA segment, basing on predictive models and previous functions of known genes and DNA segments. Then they build something. They build a molecule, or in this case, a protein. They test its functionality for properties that they're aiming for. Then they, from the results of the test, they learn from those results to improve the design process. And basically this process continues until we have a desired product. I could give an example. Let's say if I want to design a perfume that smells like rose flower. So basically I look out for which proteins we've sequenced before that give us this kind of scent or a similar scent. Then I design a molecule. Basically I synthesize DNA using that predictive model. I translate it into a protein and then test the formed protein for the qualities I'm expecting in the kind of molecule I expect to get from this. So either I may get the accurate scent, or maybe I may fall short of that. Depending on what I get from my testing here, I will go back to the modeling and improve and see what parameters to adjust and redesign and build until I have the perfect desired product. So through this process, there have been lots of benefits, lots of improvements, and lots of improvements on how biotech is basically done, and also on the range of products that now can be produced from already existing biological systems and resources. So how are we applying synthetic biology? That system, first of all, combining information technology, engineering, and biosciences, this is what happens, is that one, the scientists observe the processes traditionally done by biotechnologists like PCR, and they basically look for how they can automate many of these processes. I could give an example of pipetting. And traditionally, if I was pipetting 1,000 samples, it would take me a very long time. And also because I'm a human, I would be bound to make a lot of mistakes. But then pipetting doesn't have to be something done necessarily by an individual, There are things that can be done by robots. So basically, what's happening in this company is that they observe processes done by scientists, and they look for how they can introduce automation and engineering principles into these processes. Yeah. So for example, pipetting, the diagram, the photo you can see here, this is basically a machine that can do pipetting of these samples accurately and in a very short period of time, increasing how many samples can be worked on, and also reducing the margin for error. So basically, this enables people to come up with products in very record time. Some of the applications of synthetic biology is food. In the US, we now have what we call plant-based burgers. Burgers traditionally are made using meat and sandwiched between bread and those other ingredients. However, now what the scientists have done is that they've been able to get plant material and give it that meaty texture. At the same time, give it that red color, that you get a burger that exactly looks like the meat burger, only that this is now plant-based. And why we are heading for this direction is to reduce the need for more livestock and also reduce the impact on the environment that comes from rearing animals. Another application of synthetic biology is one that probably many of us are now familiar with, and that is vaccines. You've observed that with the COVID pandemic, vaccines have been developed in a shorter time than previously was possible. Previously, vaccine development would take a period of 7 to 10 years, or even more than 10 years. And this was largely because of, one, the trial and error process of developing the vaccine candidates. Two, the legal framework, regulation, was quite hectic and slow. that really it took most of the time was spent in trying to get the things approved, even after research is done. However, with the pandemic, it being an emergency situation, the regulatory process was really fastened, but most importantly, using synthetic biology, this modeling, the design, build, test, and learn process made sure that the trial and error approaches that had to be tested out, the vaccine candidates, were a lot less than what would have been possible previously. So this reduced the time spent in research and development, but at the same time, it increased the chances of success of the tested vaccine candidates. So that's why we were able to witness having vaccines approved within a period of a year, compared to 10 years that was possible previously. Synthetic biology has also been applied to therapeutics. So we are now having very advanced drugs. We're having drugs that have been designed to respond to particular genetic makeups, increasing the precision of these medicines. Synthetic biology is also being applied in agriculture. The more common thing we are conversant with in agriculture is genetic engineering, and now we have what you call gene editing. With gene editing, we don't need to introduce a foreign gene as has been done previously. Here, what we can do is that we edit precisely. For example, if we can either turn on or turn off a gene to introduce a given trait. Previously, how engineering was done is that if I want to introduce, let's say, resistance for a disease in, let's say, cassava, I would look for which plant or which variety is resistant to this cassava, and basically cut out that piece and introduce it into cassava to form what you're calling a transgene plant, or in this case, a GMO, a genetically modified plant. However, now with gene editing, I really do not need to do that. I just have to look for the genes involved in the pathology of that disease and look for which gene to turn on or turn off and introduce resistance to these plants here. The other thing that we're now doing in agriculture is a company working on ensuring that the ability of legumes to fix nitrogen in the soil can be now introduced into non-legume plants. So that we now reduce the application of the NPK and those synthetic fertilizers that have being used by farmers to add nitrogen contents, nitrates into the soil. The other thing we are doing is cosmetics, as the example I gave earlier of perfumes and also lotions and vaselines and all that. It is being applied there. We're having bioremediation, where we are having now people using microbes to degrade plastic in the environment. A number of projects are ongoing in that. We're having a number of researchers developing materials. In this case, we are having biomaterials being used in other industries. An example is in the automotive industry. We're having things like the windscreens and other body parts of the cars being replaced with biodegradable material to reduce the utilization of non-renewable resources. We're having synthetic biology being applied to biofuels. This is something that has been used in many countries now. And also having now integration of biofuels into the traditional fuels, the petroleum-based fuels, to kind of have a gradual change from these inorganic fuels to eventually having fully biofuels and organic fuels that can easily degrade into the environment. Then you're also using synthetic biology to improve the precision of diagnostics. What we are having now in the US is a company, Ginkgo Bioworks, that is carrying out mass testing of COVID-19 in schools and in other districts and states of the US. How we are able to do this, even here in our own country, Uganda, that the precision of these COVID-19 tests has increased from waiting for days to waiting for hours. All this is possible with advanced techniques and increased automation that has been made possible by synthetic biology. And lastly, we are having biosecurity. And we're now using these rapid diagnostics to increase the efficiency of disease surveillance. And also, we're having a company, Ginkgo Bioworks, developing a system whereby, depending on the DNA segment or the nucleotides you order online from these companies selling them, they can detect whether you are intending to use them for research or in this case for bioterrorism. So in other words, there are particular orders that have been flagged as bioterrorist threats. So you order for such segments or such primers or such nucleotides or such basically reagents, they can know they flagged you, and basically you have to do more explaining on what your internet purpose is, so that they reduce the chances of people simply ordering these things and making up their own laboratories in their backyards, and the next thing you know, you're having all sorts of diseases and pandemics all over the place. So basically, these are the applications of synthetic biology. Now, today's topic is, how is this synthetic biology feeding into the bioeconomy? How is it feeding into the bioeconomy? And that's what we are going to look at next. How is synthetic biology revolutionizing the bioeconomy? So I'm going to explain that in this slide. As I explained before, is that the process of synthetic biology is based on either 3 or 4. You design, you build, you test, and then in between there is learning before you redesign again. So how this is really improving the bioeconomy, one, is that it is accelerating the research and development cycle of the biotech sector. In that, now with in silico modeling or with software modeling, you reduce the number of trial and error approaches, as I explained for the vaccines. That using these models, you can tell which vaccines have a high percentage of actually delivering the immunity, or which ones will just waste time, depending on the percentage modeled by the computer softwares. So this, as I explained, it reduces on the time of research and development, and also saves resources in terms of money and reagents. The second thing that synthetic biology is doing to boost to revolutionize the bioeconomy is that now it is possible to read or sequence thousands of segments or even millions of segments in a very short time. I was recently looking at a project being worked on cannabinoids, whereby Ginkgo Bioworks, in collaboration with Biologics, has been able to sequence 8 million these are cannabinoids in a space of 2 years. This is a very huge amount of data that has been collected in a very short time. So what happens is that this data is available publicly, in that now researchers can access this data using software model and understand what can work, and also increase the efficiency of research and development. The other thing that synthetic biology has done to boost the bioeconomy is that it is now possible to have research and development running at the same time as scalable manufacturing at the same time. So basically, we're able to separate these two processes so that each sector or each company in this case can focus on their strength and increase the rate at which products are churned out. The example that we are now having, we're having companies whereby their exclusive business is to do research on these products, transfer these developed products into those companies whose now business is to manufacture and package these products to the market. An example is for the example of these vaccines. When you look at the Moderna vaccine, most of the research and development, in other words, the design work and the building of what I would call the candidate vaccines for Moderna, were done by Ginkgo Bioworks. They're able to do these rapid tests. They build the molecules and then test them out until they narrow down to a given number of candidates that then now are tested out in the clinical trials and those things, reducing and saving time on the whole vaccine development process. The same thing is happening for other industries, that now people can use such platforms to develop like molecules for perfumes, develop therapeutics, antibiotics, and very many other applications, that then these companies can now do the upscaling and also the mass production without having to worry about their research and development. So they're able to kind of focus their resources on something they do best, which in this case is manufacturing, upscaling, and also distribution to the market. The other thing that synthetic biology has done is enabling new products, and of course, now opening up new markets. You're also having higher value replacement products, and you're now having cleaner, more efficient, and cheaper platforms for doing this. An example is the biofuels that I talked about earlier. I've also talked about application of synthetic biology in other industries, like the construction, that now we are finding more use for biological resources in construction of houses and all these buildings, reduce the consumption and need for non-renewable resources. On the end of the consumer, now what we are having as the consumers, that we're now having the chance of enjoying higher quality and more sustainable products. We are also having increased production, which is now in position to meet population demands in health, food, environment, and also improving the quality of life. On the aspect of research, we are now having an acceleration in the R&D cycle because of automation, as I explained earlier. And also now having advanced scope and capabilities in that now we can even get to sequence almost any kind of molecule in nature and find a use for each of these things that you're discovering and learning about biology. And now what synthetic biology is doing for the biotech startup community and the entrepreneurial bit of the bioeconomy is that now it is very feasible to invest in startups. If I to look at other countries that have advanced in the bioeconomy, it is making it possible for investors to take the risk of investing in the biotech startups. One, because of the rapid process of prototyping, cheaper and faster research and development, decreased the risk and increased feasibility. So all these are combining to foster innovation and also increase the chances of success of these biotech startups. An example is of the competition we have known as the International Genetic Engineering Machine, or abbreviated as IGEM. That this is a competition of biotech startups, students from university level and high school level, who come up with new ways of utilizing biological resources to either make therapeutics or maybe design new enzymes or utilize a new metabolite and basically make new biological products. These compete, and the best projects from each of these categories, they get to get funding and scale up into now biotech businesses. As observed elsewhere, now investment in biotech startups is increasing because the period taken to come up with a prototype has been reduced. Nowadays, the cost of sequencing DNA has reduced so much by almost 1,000-fold from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, in that now it is cheaper to sequence, let's say, a whole genome of bacteria than it was previously. What this does is that it requires less resources to start, which now makes the basis for biotech startups. So all these combined are ensuring that now the bioeconomy and investing in the bioeconomy is a very, very viable idea for individuals, venture capitalists, governments, and other development organizations, which what we are calling a revolution in the case of the bioeconomy. So let's look at synthetic biology and the bioeconomy in Africa. The image I've showed here is recently, that was in October last year, we had the very first International Synthetic Biology and Biosecurity Conference in Africa. And what we're having here was our Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, the Honorable Dr. Monica Msenero, along with the founder of Synbio Africa. There is Ryan, a director at Ginkgo Bioworks, Dr. Maruta from the Africa CDC. So these were launching efforts of Synbio Africa that has now commenced operations officially and is working on a number of things that I'll communicate as I go along in this presentation. So what is the synthesis of synthetic biology in Africa? One, for gene editing, we have ongoing projects in Kenya, Nigeria, and Eswatini. And Africa being a rich food basket, most of these efforts are in agriculture. They're trying to work on things like introducing disease resistance in a number of crops to using gene editing. And why this is really becoming more attractive than what I would call genetic engineering is that one of the ethical issues that was being raised previously of introducing foreign genes into these crops has been dealt with. With gene editing, there's no need for introducing a foreign gene. You basically work with what you have. Two is that this is creating more room for utilizing local varieties, which is creating more utility for our local biodiversity. Other efforts for synthetic biology in Africa, we have vaccine plants being set up in South Africa, Algeria, Egypt, Nigeria, Senegal, and Morocco. Of course, this has been largely fueled by the pandemic, which has created an urgent need for countries to have in-house capacity to develop some of these products. Uganda also, our president last year launched an mRNA vaccine development plant somewhere in an industrial park, I think in Namamve. However, there have been quite a number of debates regarding how far the vaccine development process has gone in Uganda. However, on the side of livestock, Naro, Naliri, they are working on a tick vaccine, and also Makerere University is working on the tick vaccine. So all these are ongoing efforts in this field. We are having a number of biomaterials research projects ongoing in South Africa. As I explained, biomaterials, the aim here is finding how to replace non-degradable materials like plastics or parts of cars, or maybe construction materials, replacing them with biodegradable materials. That's what basically is happening in this project. We're also having an ongoing project here in Synbio Africa in the same line. Similarly, countries are waking up to this idea of the bioeconomy. Basically, the bioeconomy is looking at what portion of the economy is being contributed by biotechnology. Previously, as science communicators, the challenge I think we were facing with advancing genetic engineering is I think we are preaching more the science and probably less the benefits in terms of a language that almost anyone can appreciate. So the bioeconomy is looking at communicating the same message, the same technologies, only that now we are looking at aspects like what is the contribution of this sector in terms of revenues, how much imports and exports and basically income flow is happening in the economy, and also how many employment opportunities are being created for the masses. So with these two clarified, it is almost impossible for anyone to resist the urge to invest in the bioeconomy, which is what is being realized in the countries that are implementing the bioeconomy strategies and also actively investing in this sector. In Africa, South Africa is far ahead in this. Eastern Africa, we have a group called Bioinnovate Africa that worked with the East African Science and Technology Commission. And they're about, I think, 7 countries who had an effort to create like a regional bioeconomy kind of strategy or policy document. Now that is meant to guide the individual countries to kind of develop their own bioeconomy strategies. Uganda has a draft bioeconomy policy, the national bioeconomy policy, that is yet to be approved by cabinet. So this is basically meant to show government commitment to investment in the bioeconomy. And I believe with the current environment of the president advocating for the pathogen economy, the minister showing more interest in biotech startups, this is going to pave way for a number of biotech innovators and biotech students to come up with solutions to pressing challenges, as I will highlight some of these opportunities as we go on. Also in Africa, we're now having synthetic biology communities. These are basically platforms that are bringing together synthetic biologists on the continent and abroad, and also policymakers, science communicators, students, and generally investors and well-wishers, synthetic biology, to work together to implement projects in this field. We are also having a number of biotech startups, though most of these are concentrated in the region of South Africa, because for them, they are way ahead of us than most of the countries in advancing biotech and synthetic biology. So if you want to learn more about the detailed communities and the projects, you can get to reach out to Synbio Africa and also join them as a member and be able to participate and play a part in this movement of synthetic biology and the bioeconomy. So in Africa, for those of us who are biotechnologists that are thinking of innovating in this line, what are the opportunities that you can think of developing innovations in? One is rapid response production of vaccines and other biologicals in plants. Recently in COVID, there was like an uprise of all kinds of products that were helping manage COVID. In Uganda, we had COVIDX, COVILICE, COVICIN. Recently, I came across Systema University having a project that is basically looking at
usually find that
someone unmuted.
yeah,
Yes, I was explaining that Systema University is having an ongoing project whereby their role is to do what you call bioprospecting. They'll scout plants and look for what active ingredients are in these plants that can be used to address these viral diseases. So the students and scientists on this platform, this is something really you could look into. Africa is well blessed with a lot of biodiversity. That little of it has been studied extensively to understand what benefits we can have in terms of creating new products for the market, for the food and beverage industry, for cosmetics, but most importantly for therapeutics and vaccines. So this is something you can look at, and it is a unique opportunity in Africa. Two is that new breeding techniques in plants based on gene editing. As I highlighted earlier, a few countries are implementing gene editing. So that means this is a new area that researchers, those who are looking to do masters, PhDs, and research projects can exploit and deliver solutions in both plants and animals. The other is that we have Africa low-cost diagnostics and biosensors, especially those that don't require like things like very cold conditions, things that are very portable, that they can be used in the field. For example, when you are receiving vaccines from the COVAX facility, we found that some vaccines require very low temperatures for storage, and others can relatively be stored at almost normal refrigeration. Yeah, what that meant is that Uganda, for example, didn't have a lot of sophisticated facilities to maintain vaccines at very low temperatures. Some of these were limited to like Kampala, Wakiso, and those areas where you could easily access them to those facilities. So other parts of the country were left out. An example of that is Pfizer. Whereas for AstraZeneca, it was distributed across the country because its conditions really weren't that difficult to meet in terms of preservation and storage. So the same thing applies to diagnostics and biosensors. Is that looking at the condition of Africa, we need a lot of diagnostics that can be easily utilized in almost any part of the country. For example, the other year, I was able to interact with Dr. Wayengra, who developed an Ebola diagnostic kit that was as simple to use as a pregnancy test. What this meant that people no longer had to transport samples to, let's say, in our case, UVRI, or fly them out to Canada or South Africa to know that a patient has Ebola or not. At the very point of delivery, of the point of care, and then the nurse or medical worker could use this strip, test the patient's sample, and tell that the patient is suffering from Ebola or free from that disease. So we need more of such easy and low cost to use diagnostics and biosensors, which I believe the brains in our country and on the continent can really come up with. The other is biomining and bioproduction. Biomining, this is utilizing plants to extract minerals from the soil and thereafter extracting the minerals from the plants. Yeah. So one, this reduces the negative impacts of this whole process of extracting minerals from the earth, reduces its impact on the environment. And also that has lasting effects on curbing down climate change. Then bioproduction is where we are now having the biotech students here and other scientists could have heard of what you're calling edible vaccines. So this is producing therapeutics using bioplants and also producing useful products or enzymes or metabolites using biological resources. Also, synthetic biology being a new field, especially in Africa, there are lots of opportunities for training and education. So this is for more interest on the side of students and scientists that are earlier on in their areas. Yeah, there are lots of opportunities to train, and also you have a chance to pioneer a number of projects in Africa, because synthetic biology is only coming to Africa. We're now starting to have partnerships with the Africa CDC and other research institutes to improve the capacity of African countries to develop some of their own products using synthetic biology. However, this, of course, is having a number of challenges at the moment, which a number of people and organizations are working on addressing. That in Africa and Uganda, there's a general lack of funding, a general lack of skills, and a general lack of infrastructure at multiple levels. At the education level, that is in the schools and the universities. In the industrial level, the capacity of our industries to, first of all, automate, yeah, automation. Second, who is going to overlook or supervise this automation? We need a lot of computer engineers, automation engineers, and all these kinds of things, yeah? And also the technicians in these industries being in position to understand that there are ways that they could improve their production lines by utilizing synthetic biology. There's also this same lack of skills at the government level. We are trying to lobby government for like the bioeconomy policy and for investment in synthetic biology. But who are we lobbying to? Do they understand what we're discussing? So we need a lot of like science communication and advocacy to be able to advance this agenda. And the same applies to investors. But as I have explained, in other countries, using synthetic biology has made innovation and starting a biotech company relatively easier and less risky than it was before, years ago, yeah? What this has done for other countries is attracting more investment. However, in our country like Uganda, people are still skeptical investing in these things. Why? Probably because they're not aware of the technology, they're not aware of the opportunities it has, they're not aware of the market viability of these biotech startups, of which it is our really duty to inform them of such opportunities. The last time we had Dr. Nuchigun talking about the bioeconomy, basically highlighted that he's starting up a kind of club that's going to bring together venture capitalists to interact with people with interests in biotech startups and synthetic biology. Hopefully having more of such efforts will address this issue. And of course, then you have limited public and political understanding of biotech. This we have witnessed a lot with genetic engineering. In Uganda, we've been advocating for the GMO bill for like 3 decades now. Until now, we are still on the same efforts. So really having these political frustrations, having such a ground, makes it less profitable, you know, and less viable to have some of these ventures. Hopefully, with the new approaches, with the bioeconomy and all these new language and communication fronts, we shall have more traction along this line of synthetic biology and the bioeconomy. So what next? Having looked at synthetic biology and how it is really driving a boost on the bioeconomy, what next? What can they do about these opportunities and this knowledge you've just had? One, that Synbio Africa, which I'm representing in this presentation, is working on establishing a synthetic biology and biosecurity center of excellency. Let me skip the next slide and tell you what is in the center of excellency. So this center of excellency will be based here in Uganda, and to cover 5 thematic areas: research, capacity development, bioinformatics and data science, biosafety and biosecurity, and shall also have an innovation hub for synthetic biology. The mission of Synbio Africa is to have this done by 2024. Some of these are already ongoing research projects, and also there is a training that is going to happen soon. Those of you who are here, you can look up Synbio Africa on Twitter and the other platforms. They're having a training on bioinformatics and data science coming up. The deadline for application is tomorrow. So you have till the end of today and till the end of tomorrow to apply for that bioinformatics training. And more of such trainings and fellowships and opportunities to train in synthetic biology are going to come up. So I encourage you to really keep your eyes and ears on online to ensure that you don't miss out on such opportunities. At the Center of Excellency, they have a number of collaborators, public organizations, civil society and NGOs, educational institutions, private sector, and government organizations. So the aim here is to have like a one-stop center where both companies, students, researchers, and any other person with interest in synthetic biology, they can come and think and develop and incubate their ideas and eventually translate these ideas onto the market. One thing that I didn't mention earlier is that one of the key factors of success of synthetic biology in the bioeconomy is that right away from the point of research and development, the innovator or the scientist in this case is thinking through the routes to the market. So in other words, synthetic biology, why it's very, very exciting is that it begins with a product in mind. So that's why it's easier for them to be taken up into the mainstream economy. So yes, basic science and basic research is still key to generate knowledge that can translate into products. But the key here that has been really key to success is that when I start to think of, let's say, for example, you have a project ongoing of using bacteria to degrade plastics. That as I write the proposal for such a project, I'm thinking of how eventually this can become an economic venture, of how it can scale up on the market, who will be buying these products, who will I need to employ in this company. So all these things need to be thought through right away from the onset of these ideas. So that translation of the idea onto the market is a bit more smooth than previously was with traditional biotechnology. So beyond that, there's an opportunity to advocate for government commitment and investment in the bioeconomy. As I've told you, the language of GDP or revenues, imports and exports, and also jobs is a language that almost any government on the earth can understand. And if you have to take time to read about bioeconomies elsewhere, they've taken time to collect such data, whereby they're able to understand how much their bioeconomies are contributing to the economy in terms of jobs, in terms of revenues, which is something we badly need in Africa, and especially in our country, Uganda. You have a lot of unemployment here, but still you have a lot of talent that can solve this unemployment. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier, was iGEM. iGEM is the international competition where people can pitch their biotech startup ideas, and the winning teams, projects get funding, and they get to scale up their projects into biotech companies. One of the biggest biotech companies now globally, Ginkgo Bioworks, which is valued at over $15 billion now, was started by a team of iGEMers, people who have participated in iGEM. Yeah, so are many other symbio companies that we come across. So this competition is really key to, and there are many other competitions. You can always contact Symbio Africa or myself, and there's opportunities there, many of them, where you can pitch your biotech idea and get support to translate that idea into a product and eventually into a company and create value for the community and also create employment opportunities. And lastly, what next? As I mentioned, there are lots of training opportunities available for synthetic biology, training in things like bioinformatics, data science, biosecurity, biosafety, biotechnology itself, gene editing, genome editing, all these things. There are lots of training opportunities that you can find on websites like the iGEM website, the Symbio Africa website, and basically a quick search on the internet, you can come across these. There are efforts to create some of these resources that you can find them in one place, like on the Symbio Africa website or the iGEM website, so that you can be able to skill yourself in this. Because now what is happening is that now that biotech is being used to scale up production, there is a crisis of labor, yeah? Because, most of the people who have the PhDs and masters, they are more on the knowledge side of generating, than side of generating knowledge and, thinking through the science. Now, people to work on the manufacturing bit of these products, there's really a crisis of this, especially in countries that have having a lot of biotech startups like the US and in Europe. So now what is happening is that people are coming up with what we are calling workforce efforts, whereby they are designing curricula like what we're having technical training here, whereby someone goes to school for like 6 months, and learn maybe how to weld or how to do something like that. So the same programs are being designed for biotech, whereby someone goes for like a 6-month or 1-month training, and then they come and offer labor in a biotech company or in a pharmaceutical company. So all these are really opportunities we can exploit. Yeah. And I really hope the people who are tuning into this discussion get to take advantage of this and get to make biotech work for the economies. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and for more details or for inquiries or for more about what I've discussed here, you can always reach out to me on that email. Yeah, thank you very much for listening, and welcome to any questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ian. I really appreciate that presentation. It had a big scope, highlighting the status quo, or maybe the real synthetic biology. What does it entail? Also highlighting challenges, highlighting the opportunities at hand, and what is really at stake for young scientists and those that have interest in this field of science. I want to now probably I've not got any questions in the chat space, but as for the interest, of course, like I said in the beginning, these sessions are recorded, and people, especially my students, my fellow students, those who are unable to be here, they are actually in exams, first year and second year. There is an exam ongoing actually, and one going to begin at midday, so they couldn't be here. But for now, I would like to ask you to highlight what exactly is accelerating the emergence of synthetic biology here in Africa, or maybe in Uganda, or maybe worldwide. What could have accelerated it so that we look at what really is making synthetic biology a key part of the 21st century biosciences and biotechnology? What is accelerating it for the interest of someone who probably wants to know? Yes, Mr. Ian.
Yes, so what's accelerating this interest is that it works. How does it work? It works in terms of money, in terms of jobs. Yeah, so when something works, everyone wants to jump on it. Yeah, so as I explained, that what synthetic biology is doing is that it is making the whole process of investing in a biotech startup more profitable and less risky for the investors. Yeah, and also that we are now having a wider range of products produced more efficiently. So what's generating this interest is that people are getting to realize how much more beneficial it is. I could give an example. Let's look at the vaccine business that has become very common in the pandemic. Yeah. If you're to look at the crisis we had, we're already having like about 7 or 10 companies making vaccines. But even then, the level at which they're producing at maximum level, you know, the level at which they're producing is not enough to satisfy the entire population's demand. That's why at some point, Uganda, we had a complaint by our MPs that they have the money to buy the vaccines, but no one is selling to them. What does that mean? That there is a lot of market for synthetic biology products. And also the fact that their R&D cycle has been made more efficient, now that it's more affordable and less costly in terms of resources. This means that their products are more accessible. I hope you get what I'm trying to explain here. So because of this benefit of one, there are more exports, more revenues for governments. I could give an example of, let's look at the US, Ginkgo Bioworks, one which is a company I'm more convenient with. Recently, that was, I think, around December or November, it went public, selling its shares publicly. And the valuation was at $15 billion US. Now, this is a biotech startup that is almost about 12 years old. And their product, you can imagine, they aren't selling vaccines, they aren't selling a product as such. Their business is a service. What basically happens at Ginkgo is that you think up something crazy, you bring it to them, they develop it for you, take it back to your company, make a product and sell it. So in other words, the idea of developing new products has become really very cheap. In other words, I could be a scientist, let's say in a pharmaceutical company, think up of a crazy idea. I'm like, I think maybe I could have living, what you're calling now living medicine, which is now possible. Basically, they make a medicine that is of living, let's say now like bacteria or something of the sort. goes into your gut, takes care of whatever is disturbing your digestive system, and you're good to go. Yeah. So someone thinks up of such an idea, probably they don't have the resources, the technology, the time to come up with the final product. They're like, okay, do it for me. Do all your trial and error approaches, come to me, the final product, and I roll out to the market. So what that does is that as a company, for example, as a pharmaceutical company, I get to focus on my business of churning out medicines and having to worry less about the other things. So this kind of gold mine, I would call it, is creating interest all over the place. And I think that's making this really very interesting is climate change. As we are aware, climate change effects are really rampant across the globe. In Africa, how we experience climate change is in terms of agriculture. We are having more things like droughts, we are having more pests. Probably what some of you aren't aware of is that increase in prevalence of pests and diseases is largely because of climate change. How? When climate change affects their natural habitats, they are forced to migrate to us, the human beings. They come to our gardens, they come to, so you're having all the things happening because climate change is affecting other places. The droughts. Can you imagine Uganda? Some people were experiencing famine. Uganda is the part of Africa with some of the fertile soils and all these rains. But there are some areas of the country where people are having serious hunger, serious famine, to the point of eating cassava leaves. And what's causing this? The climate change that is affecting the weather patterns, and is affecting the availability of all these key nutrients that the plants need. So because synthetic biology is looking at how we can economically make our lifestyle more sustainable, it is finding more utilization in various economies. An example is what I explained earlier of carpets. Yeah, that if we could get the car to have like 70% of its material, which traditionally is metal, if I could replace that by about 70% by biodegradable material, what that does is that reduces the need for me to exploit the environment in search for these minerals and metals, and also ensures that when finally the car is disposed of, there's less damage to the environment. So with all these outcries of climate change, finally synthetic biology is giving people something that is good for the climate, where at the same time, it's good for the pocket. So that's what is making all this buzz about climate, about synthetic biology happen across the world.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Ian. Yes, I would like to probably give it a brief approach to the questions coming in the chat space, but I would want to relate them to some of these that I had highlighted here. At what stage in the bioeconomy value chain do we see entry of this bioeconomy? Relating to this gentleman's question, Mr. I think Akire Xavier is asking about. Let me see, chat space. He's asking about can synthetic biology be applied in value addition of produces such as those from agriculture, and how? I think briefly you've talked about some of these things, but briefly you can respond to these two questions, plus Mr. Goodwin Intare, who is asking what's the status of the synthetic biology in Uganda, except in agriculture. Probably he's asking how is a trend of synthetic biology in Uganda. Yes, Mr. Ian, briefly, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Atire and Tali, for those questions. So for the case of agriculture, can synthetic biology be employed in value addition of produces such as those from agriculture? Yes, very much so. As I explained earlier, something that's not yet common here in Africa, the plant-based burger. A plant-based burger, whereby you get to create a product that looks like meat and tastes like meat, but it is not meat. So what this does, that livestock is a very costly process on the environment. I hope we are aware of that. So that's why the scientists globally are looking for ways of how they can reduce the need for them to have more livestock. So they're trying to come up with things with like plant-based burgers, plant-based milk. So that really, I don't really have to look at entirely cows for producing milk. So all the things are happening. The second application for agriculture was gene editing. So gene editing is being applied as an alternative to genetic engineering. Why? Because for gene editing, I don't require to introduce a foreign gene. And also gene editing, I have a crop, I get to work with what I have, my local varieties, my local breeds and all that. So that's one, that's second. Two, for produces from agriculture is that synthetic biology is being used to improve the production process. They're able to come up with more efficient enzymes in terms of, for example, for the beverage industry or the breweries, basically the food and beverage industry that uses enzymes at various stages of their production. That with synthetic biology, researchers and these innovators are in position to come up with enzymes with higher efficiency of converting these substrates into the final products. What this means is that for a company that is looking at maybe converting, let's say like cassava into maybe beer or millet into beer, I'm getting to utilize less enzyme, but at the same time having more output. So the end goal of that is to reduce the whole cost of production of such products. So it is being utilized in such ways.
Yes, Mr. Ian. I
and
think
for,
the last question.
For the question of entirely question of status of technology in Uganda, besides agriculture, as I highlighted, that the efforts to set up vaccine plants in Uganda. Two, there are projects ongoing at Synthetic Africa to have degrading of plastics using bacteria, using biology or using biotech. Secondly, you're having another project ongoing where we are going to use, they're using phages to address acne. Acne is pimples on the face, basically. That's what the manifest says. So it is being utilized in the same way. The other example I gave earlier is livestock research. Livestock research, that is for vaccines for livestock, and many other applications. But one thing we need to recognize is that in much of Africa, except South Africa, synthetic biology is largely new, which is why my outcry here is for many of us to take interest in training in these technologies so that we kind of pioneer these uses of synthetic biology in Africa. So it's largely new, with South Africa largely being the leading developer in this. The ones who are having many of these vaccine efforts, the efforts to have plant-based alternatives to traditionally livestock-based products, efforts to have biomaterials replacing non-degradable materials. So in Uganda, we are only starting. And why we are advocating for things like the bioeconomy policy is to have government actively investing. Because we have the talent, we have the scientists, we have the researchers, but without government support and support of other partners, we really can't do much here. So that's one thing we can do to take advantage of synthetic biology in Africa.
Yes, Mr. Ian, thank you so much. I want you to conclude highlighting on these three key issues. You mentioned earlier on, while I asked about what is accelerating synthetic biology here in Uganda or maybe Africa, and you said it worked, and you said it is what is attracting investment. So I want you to actually conclude highlighting, one, really, are these investments, or maybe is there a problem, an example we could highlight how probably we are attracting these investors? Because formerly, when we were tackling biotechnology and looking at the bill that was in Parliament and has been in Parliament and still is in Parliament, we looked at these investors, exiting the country because of no supporting legal frameworks. So I want you to highlight, one, you talk about investment, you talk about the laws and the policies that are interfacing with synthetic biology. And I want you to also highlight something to do with an institutional framework, because you said the minds are here, people are ready. So I want you to design an institutional framework. Which do you think we could drive this synthetic biology as an application towards boosting the bioeconomy. So we look at investment, we look at laws and policies interfacing with synthetic biology, and also conclude telling us, or maybe designing for us, an institutional framework so that we have every stakeholder on board supporting this bioeconomy, and so that we see through. And after that, then we shall be concluding. And I hope our listeners, actually, you're supposed to go in the chat space and be able to register with us. So there is a link, a Google form ongoing, and we shall conclude, I think, right after that. Mr. Ian, please.
Thank you. So what you highlighted earlier was true, especially for investors who are interested in specifically GM crops or GM technologies in agriculture. However, from the various applications of synthetic biology that I've highlighted, if there's anything you can pick from this, is that biotech is broad, and there's really, today, so far there's little we have exploited from our biodiversity. So what we are calling a hostile, let's say, policy environment to biotech, it's not really to biotech, it's to genetic engineering in agriculture. And the earlier really get to understand and appreciate that, the better for us. In other words, even someone who at the moment would like to develop something, let's say in the cosmetic line, they'll sit on their brains, on their hands, and be like, I can't do this because there is no law. The law isn't for you. You can do whatever you want to do, you know? So one of the things we want to highlight in our message here is that biotech isn't banned from Uganda. That should come out clearly. Uganda has a lot of opportunity for biotech applications, biotech products. The only product facing a snag, which I'm hopeful to soon be addressed, is genetic engineering in agriculture. For the rest of the applications, no one is stopping you from doing what you want. Yeah, that's why you find that there are vaccine plants being launched here. You're having URI churning out products. More herbal medicines are coming up. You know, more cosmetic companies are being opened. As in, more applications of biotech and biodiversity are coming up each and every day. So, the students and scientists here, one thing you need to understand is that biotech in Uganda is not banned. Nothing is stopping you from innovating. The only thing being regulated or being restricted is engineering in agriculture, which really is a small fraction of what you guys can really do with the biotech you've studied. So in that matter, therefore, one of the efforts we are going to work on under the Bioeconomic Coalition of Ugandans in Bio-Africa is to change that narrative that biotech in Uganda is not happening. No, we are doing biotech. We are having tissue culture companies. We have AGT. We have Unsigotech. People are buying tissue culture plants. That's biotech being applied. And they're exporting all the things all over the place. So the narrative that biotech is not happening in Uganda is completely wrong. And I would like us to really change from that. That's one. Secondly, the laws and policies, would give an example of, let's say, what you're looking at of the bioeconomy. Why we are advocating for these policies is not really necessarily to enable us to think or innovate, no. What you want them for is to have this government commitment. What the government commitment does is to create a better playing ground for us to do what we have to do in terms of innovation. We can still innovate at the current state. For example, if I were to come up, let's say, with bacteria degrading plastic, I don't think there's a lot stopping me from doing that. I can get it approved by UNCST and all these various standard bodies and get it on the market, as long as there is value for it. So the laws and policies, and now you're pushing for like the bioeconomy policy, is to have government commitment, which that will mean is that government will get to invest in teaching biotech, in teaching the bioeconomy and synthetic biology at our universities. It will set up infrastructure. It will create more jobs within its system to support this. It will also create favorable shipping policies. For those of you who are shipping in reagents and shipping out biotech products, it will become an easier and much more smoother process for us to do that. So this is what we need from government. But even at the current level, we can still think, innovate, and have these products on the market, of which the number of individuals doing that. Possibly, maybe what you could have the next time is getting one of the people who are running the biotech startups to come and tell us how they've found the journey. But the number of them happening in our country. So what we need to communicate to ourselves and to investors and to development partners is that biotech is possible in Uganda. There's no caveat on biotech as the technology, no. There's only a caveat on genetic engineering in agriculture. Secondly, what we need to do is to generate data showing the viability of the bioeconomy in Uganda. That even at the current state with less automation, less bioinformatics, less IT in biotech, there's still a bit of the economy that is thriving off biotech applications, which we need to highlight and also sell the message that with more investment, with more biotech startups coming up, there will be much more benefits to the investors coming in. The other I talked of was the institutional framework. We have been lamenting over what I would call a demotion of the Ministry of Science and Technology to more a department in the office of the president. But nonetheless, we have a minister, and the minister has a budget and has initiatives going on to promote science and technology and innovation. So that's one institute we can utilize first. Two, we have a number of organizations working at advocating and lobbying for our biotech space. We have CIFOD, UBBC, we have PBS, we have UBIC, NARO, URI, and all these other organizations. These serve as part of what we'd call now the civil society and the non-government organizations to help us advocate for a better environment. The other thing that now we need is to something like what you're proposing in the Bioeconomy Coalition of Uganda, that you need collective lobbying, which is what other countries have been able to benefit from. That the prospect of an individual biotech startup by Ian reaching out for an investment, let's say from the European Union, is made better if Ian is going as part of a coalition of, let's say, the entire biotech or SynBio community in Uganda. And that's what SynBio Africa is leveraging on for synthetic biology. Why they are seeking to develop the center of excellence and also have their platform in the first place is to increase that lobbying power. That it's easier to look for development support for an innovation hub that's going to support a larger number of, let's say, biotech startups, then probably it would be to seek out for that same support for just maybe Ian's project. So we're having all these efforts coming together, and they encourage us to be part of these efforts, these platforms, so that we have that common lobbying power for resources, for investment, for research, and for technical support, basically. And there's another coming up by Dr. Andrew Chibun that mentioned of earlier, whereby you can meet with like-minded people, you bounce ideas off each other, discuss your ideas, talk to venture capitalists, and get things up and running. So that is something we also need. The other thing we also need to do is to engage the media on the bioeconomy. So that's why such initiatives like the Biotech Online series is very important. That before you lobby for something, people need to know why they should care. Why should you care about the bioeconomy or synthetic biology or biotech? Which is why we are now communicating in terms of jobs created and revenues brought in. For at least everyone here knows someone who is suffering with unemployment, either a relative or yourself or a friend. There's this notion that the job atmosphere in Uganda and many of African countries is really terrible. Unemployment levels are high. Yet biotech presents a unique opportunity to create masses of employment for literally about anyone. I would give an example that in a typical synthetic biology company, literally every profession is going to find employment there. Whether you're an engineer, whether you're a biotech scientist, whether you're an accountant, a lawyer, a social worker, psychologist. I'll give an example. If you were to look at the employment list of a company like Ginkgo Bioworks, literally have everyone working there. Everyone, every profession working in there. So what that means that if you are to replicate that to Uganda, to every country in Africa, and many companies doing the same thing, then you're creating employment for not only the scientists, but literally just about anyone. And with more efforts to increase workforce skilling, like I highlighted earlier, that we are now having efforts to develop a workforce manual, whereby I could get someone maybe who schooled up to around P7 or senior 4, take them for a course of 6 months, and they come and offer labor in a pharmaceutical company or a bio company. Those efforts are going to make it literally, I don't know what I can describe this, like employment. There's something for everyone, I could say. So that's something we need to think about and also say in our communication. So just to summarize what I've talked about, one, government is a stakeholder and key institution, which is how you're advocating for the bioeconomy policy. Two, civil society. One is to backstop government for common lobbying and also advocating for a good policy environment. Three is communities of biotech startups or investors or those platforms, whereby you can have common lobbying power, especially in terms of resources, attracting resources. And also those same platforms will enable us, like have, as I told you, that Synbio, what's making synthetic biology really very efficient is that you begin thinking about research with the product in mind. So these platforms enable the academia and research bit of synthetic biology to work closely with the companies, so that we are developing research for products. For example, what Naro did with this Uganda breweries of making beers from cassava. If you had to have more of such linkages, whereby, let's say, in this case, maybe Coca-Cola comes to, let's say, the Department of Biotech in Makerere and is like, you want to improve maybe the process of making this syrup, or maybe of packaging, or doing whatever they are doing in their process. Yeah. So then you, the researchers, go in the lab and look at the enzymes involved there, look at how you can increase their turnover number and all those things you can do with them, increase their efficiency, basically, to reduce the production cost of Coca-Cola, or maybe even suggest alternative raw materials to these products. These are things we can do. And these are things that are making synthetic biology work for everyone. In that you think of a product, you think of researching with a product in mind. That makes the transition quite easy. I think that addresses the question Perez asked. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Ian. That was really wonderful presentation and a good really insight into this synthetic biology. Like I said, I actually was sharing with Ian a while ago. I had gotten so much confused about a few years back while I entered into my active science activism and understanding the science. It was hard for me to understand what synthetic biology was earlier then. But with such a presentation, and everyone who is going to follow up on our social media handles on YouTube, where we upload these videos, they will be able to understand what synthetic biology can and is doing for us and the livelihoods here in Uganda, but also worldwide. So I want to send special appreciation to Synbio Africa, and the CEO, Mr. Otim Geoffrey. He's actually on the call. I want to thank you so much for linking me up with Mr. Ian. Yeah, Mr. Ian has been an inspiration to me personally. That is really to confess, because while I came to university, is one of the people that I interfaced with, and I'm thankful for this journey that we've been able to walk. And in the chat space, there are some few communications from Mr. Geoffrey. He announces a launch tomorrow at 2 p.m. Those who will be able to attend, I think you can be able to follow up that space. And Mr. Michael Kea is asking if there was an opportunity to ask a question. Yes, there was, but I don't know if you have any question in particular. I think it would be okay to really give you a chance to ask that question. I don't know how you'd like to ask it, whether you unmute or and send your question. Please let me know. And one of us, Luanga Nasifu, Mr. Luanga Nasif is saying, actually commenting that would like to design an undergraduate program in line with natural products. He realizes that Mr. Ian was really giving good guidance. Thank you so much. Mr. Michael, please let me know. I wouldn't want to.
I think he can unmute and ask his question.
Really not to be able to attend to all the mute and ask a question. Mr. Michael, please.
Michael, could you please unmute and ask a question? We can't hear you.
Yes, Mr. Michael, please go ahead and ask your question.
He says the host has muted him. Maybe you can unmute him, Perez.
You'll be able to unmute, please. I don't know why he's unable to unmute, but as he's typing his question, I would like to really highlight that it's true. From this discussion, we've been able to highlight small pointers, not small, but a few pointers. And very important to note that, biopolicies or maybe government legislation on most of these issues does not stop most of us innovators to come up with ideas. So we would really want to encourage people to always come up with ideas, be able to innovate. Every time you're working out something in the lab with, just be with hope and let none of these stop you. As he noted that biotechnology is actually not illegal in the country, and that the scope is big for biotechnology. There are very many applications we could delve into, and let us not be limited to genetic engineering. I want to thank you so much, Mr. Ian, for also highlighting collaborative lobbying. It is really important, and I know it's high time we really get this going, so that we are able to foster development towards this knowledge-based economy. He has posted his question in the chat space, and I think we could really respond to him. Yes, Mr. Ian.
Yes, thank you very much, Michael, for the question. The question is, what advances have been made towards enhancing synthetic biology databases and their accessibility to researchers and innovators? As I explained earlier, is that what synthetic biology is doing for the biotech industry is trying to more or less adopt the same way the IT people do it, those who are coding apps and all that. Is that nowadays it is easier to code an app because you don't have to start coding from scratch. You can always borrow code from like different places and assemble your app. So that same quality is being done for synthetic biology. Is that with all these billions of things sequenced, there are now so many databases where you can access all these sequences, and also their associated like functionalities. And so as I told you that in the designing or the modeling, basically they look at the function they're trying to achieve. They look at sequences they already have that have a related function. Then they based on that to model a molecule they think will deliver the desired function. They build that, test it out, learn, and redesign. So all the things that have been sequenced are available publicly, and yes, they have been curated. And that database is available for that. So in search on the internet, you'll find a number of them. Yeah. So that effort is in place, and what I'm trying to explain here is that it's that effort that is making synthetic biology very efficient. In that, when I come up to do my own innovation or research, I don't have to start from scratch, and also I can kind of predict what is likely to work, and in that case, reduce how many trial and error approaches I have to have before eventually arriving at the product. So that has been done. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ian, and thank you so much, Mr. Michael, for the question. Hereafter, I think I would need to probably communicate that this series, this year, we are back. The sessions shall be, set in 2 weeks, after 2 weeks. And we want you to really always visit our social media handles and be able to follow us and get on the updates that we post over there. We are on Twitter, Biotech Series, at Biotech Series. We are on Facebook, at Biotechnology online series, but also under Biotechnology, Makerere University Biotechnology Society. On most of those platforms, you'll be able to follow us. And I would like to also emphasize about that launch. It's important for us stories collectively, come together when we are having such launches as Bio Africa, as communicated by Mr. Geoffrey. So let us be there in Chisubi, tomorrow at 2 p.m. And the contact details, I think we shall post some of this information on the social media handles so that you're able to come and attend in person. Otherwise, thank you so much for attending. These videos and most of these discussions that we hold here are always uploaded on YouTube and our channel, Biotechnology Online Series. If you want to follow previous discussions, you can go over there and you'll be able to follow along and know what progress we've made towards this advancement of science. So at this point, I want to thank you so much, Mr. Ian, for your really insightful discussion and presentation. And we look ahead to really engaging with you in other discussions going forward. Thank you so much, Mr. Ian. I hope we'll talk more probably off the call, but for now, I want to say bye to all the listeners. Thank you.
Thank you, Perez. Yeah, and I hope this people realize that synthetic biology is the next big thing. And therefore, it's really important that you join SynBio Africa so that you're basically the first to know what's going down. Yeah, the opportunities, training opportunities, conferences, and all those things. Join SynBio Africa, follow them on their platforms, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You'll be able to be abreast with all the information. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, bye. Okay, have a good day, everyone. And Happy New Year, by the way. I didn't mention that. Good day, please.